So I made a mistake with my daughter's closet. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thanks for watching me do stuff to my house. And just one thing before we get started, hit those like and subscribe buttons. It takes just one click out of your life to do it, but it helps me tremendously. Thanks a lot, guys. Let's get to it. So yeah, obviously what I just said, I messed something up with my daughter's closet. If you've been following along or watched my previous videos on completing this completing this room down in my basement, you would have saw in the first video how I installed the drywall in here in the closet. So something that I did differently in here that I didn't do anywhere else was actually use construction adhesive on all the stud faces, along with obviously screwing the drywall up. I didn't use construction adhesive anywhere else. The reason I did that was because I was intending to use some sort of hanging bracket wall closet system in here, and I wanted to make sure that my drywall was better adhered to the wall than otherwise would have been. What I came to realize was that even though I did that, that in and of itself still wasn't enough to do what I wanted to do. Unfortunately, I didn't realize this until after everything was finished. Now, Superior Walls, in some of their documentation resources, actually suggests construction adhesive with the drywall or whatever material you use to cover your studs with everything. Now, I haven't used construction adhesive anywhere other than here, and I've had no issues. And I have drywall elsewhere, and I even have other heavier sheet goods in my gym, if you saw those videos before, and I've had no issues whatsoever this entire time. So I'm sure from their standpoint, it's more of just like an extra precaution, thing to make sure everything's on there good and strong. I was just doing it here because I thought that would be enough for what I wanted to do. And once I looked into steel studs and how much strength they actually had in terms of weight and all that stuff, it was really turning out like I was not going to be able to do what I wanted to do. Because as I'm sure most of you know with your own closets, once you start getting units in here with hangrails and all that stuff, clothes can get pretty heavy. So that's going to be a whole lot of weight pulling down on these steel studs and pulling, against or away from the wall, down from the wall. And the steel studs really just aren't made.
Respond to that.
Freaking Surrey. And the steel studs really aren't just made for that kind of weight. Once I actually went and looked up Superior Walls documentation stuff, that's when I realized the real mistake that I had made. What they say in their documents and what they tell you to do, if you know you're going to be hanging something heavy off of the wall, then the best thing for you to do would be to build an actual wooden frame within the stud cavity itself. You can anchor the bottom plate to the bottom, anchor the top. Well, I don't know if you anchor the top to the... Either way, you build out a wooden frame inside that cavity, and that's what you would actually screw into for whatever your heavy load-bearing kind of stuff would be for. The bad part is, I thought about doing this. Because in my head, I knew that would likely be the best solution for what I wanted to do. But then something creeped in that hopefully I'm not the only one that suffers from this. But that laziness started to peek its ugly head, and a little bit of time pressure. So it wasn't purely that. It was some time pressure I just had on myself and just trying to get this stuff done quicker. But it was probably mostly the laziness, just not wanting to do it. I saw kind of like the end in sight of getting the drywall done and finished, and I just thought, I'll just use the glue, that'll be good enough. And I was mistaken. So I, wanting to actually hear it straight from, the horse's mouth, I called my regional Superior Walls headquarters. And I talked to somebody, I told them my situation, I told them I knew I probably should have done this and I didn't. I just kind of wanted to hear straight from them what their thoughts are, what their opinions were. And what he actually said to me was, well, you're in a bit of a bind now, aren't you? Now, don't get me wrong, he wasn't being rude. He was just basically addressing the fact that with what I wanted to do, I should have done other stuff first. That's not their fault. He wasn't being rude about it. It was my fault for not doing what I needed to do. Now, he did give me a couple suggestions, and one of them is actually in opposition to what their documents actually say. So I'm going to tell you, but I'm not telling anyone else out there to do this. I'm not doing this. I was considering it, but then we found something else, so I'm not doing it. But this is what he told me I could do, even though their documents say not to. But I'm going to go out here to show you an actual stud because I have none obviously exposed in here anymore. So I'm going to go out here to show you. Okay, so something he said that I could do was to actually concrete anchor into one of these studs, or multiple studs essentially. So he says, what you have on here is the face of 4¼ inches wide. and then you have an inch of this EPS foam on both sides, as well as the face. So what you end up with is a 2¼ inch thick, or wide, concrete stud in the center of this, at each one of these studs. In the center of that 2¼ inch wide concrete stud is a 1/2 inch wide piece of rebar, about 3/4 inch into that stud. So he says if you need to anchor into it, you could. He would recommend trying to avoid that very center, because he says that's where that 1/2 inch rebar should be, about 3/4 inch into the concrete stud. But he says if you need to, you could anchor into that concrete stud. You would just want to try to come off to the side a little bit, but still obviously within that 2¼ inches. So even though the documents say not to do that, I was told directly from Superior Walls that you could do it, if you really need to do it. Thankfully, I was able to find something else where I didn't, so I don't have to worry about that, but I did want to tell you what he told me. The other thing he told me I could do was to use like a snap toggle. I don't know if that's the brand or what, a snap toggle type drywall anchor. Now those are nice. They say they can hold a lot of weight, but at the same time, my thinking was that's still putting all the weight on the drywall, which is only being held, again, to the steel studs. Now, if the drywall was anchored into wood studs, then I guess I would have less concern. I'd be more okay with using those. But if I was on wood studs, I wouldn't need to use them anyways. Now, I do have wood studs. Let's see if it's not too dark in here. I still don't have any lights in here yet. I do have wood studs here on this back wall, which I'm going to be using. And I'm going to kind of be doing like a L shape here with the whole closet system. So this stuff will be able to be anchored into wood. But I guess with what I'm using here, it's not really concerned now. I don't really need to. So I don't know, whatever. What this video unfortunately is going to be a whole DIY, self-build, custom, from scratch closet system. I know that's one of the cool things to do on YouTube. I unfortunately do not have the time for that. That is the plan for other future projects, more important to me than this. I just don't have the time to do that for this particular thing. So now that I know that I can't hang stuff safely off of my wall, what's a boy to do? Well, I thought I only had a couple options. Find a closet system or some kind of drawer, dresser, hanging system that I didn't need to hang off the wall. Or I could use the type of closet system that I wanted to use, but I would just have to install the hang track all the way up at the top where I'd actually be able to drill into my sill plate. The problem with that being is now that's going to come into conflict with whatever I decide to do with my ceiling, which I didn't know if I really wanted to do and mess with. That would essentially be just like what I did over here in my storage room, which you can't see. Let me go look at another one. Okay, so that's obviously not up at the sill plate, but you get the idea. That hang track would be all the way up at the very top of the wall, mounted directly into my wooden sill plate on the top of my foundation walls. So that would be mounted solid into wood, and then you'd still have other vertical, not this exact kind, but a nicer, prettier kind for a closet. But you'd have vertical standards just like this hanging off there. Now those would still be screwed into the metal studs, which I think would still give it some support, some strength, but obviously it'd be getting most of its, I guess, strength or durability from that sill plate at the top of the wall. But what we ended up going with was something that had tall vertical side pieces and hung from a bracket on the wall, but it actually had feet in the front of those side pieces, down at the floor. So it was mounted to the wall so that it was held there, but the weight wasn't actually bearing fully on there. It was also bearing on the feet on the front of the unit itself as well. And those front feet were thankfully tall enough to go above our really tall baseboards. Kind of lucked out on that one. The only problem being, you're not going to love where we got this stuff from. And in fact, I'm not particularly happy about it either, but it is what it is. This is where mistakes will lead you, folks. They lead to IKEA. Now, I don't want to crap on them too much. I hope this does what we want it to do. I hope the quality's good enough for what it needs to be. I don't know yet. Hopefully in time. Hopefully a long time. But this is where I am. This is the situation I find myself in because I didn't care enough. I didn't take the time to do the job right before when I needed to. And I sure as heck wasn't going to be ripping anything out of here. No way. This is where laziness can lead you, folks. Cut that crap out. I'm obviously talking to myself. But all that stuff aside, let me actually get this thing installed so my daughter can move all her crap down here. That's kind of depressing. I mean, I guess once the weight's on it, it shouldn't go anywhere. I hope so. It has an adjustable foot, but as you can see, it makes it just over the baseboards, which I was a little worried about, so that at least makes me happy. I thought these things were just like solid fiberboard, as I think they normally are, but when I picked it up and stood it up, I actually heard stuff like falling through. You know, the sound stuff makes, things falling through on the inside. That didn't make me feel good. Let this be a lesson to all of you. You know, if you've ever bought IKEA furniture, when you get it, you assemble it, everything's put together, and you're pleasantly surprised by how decent it actually is. I did not feel like that at all today. All right, I'm not going to make you watch me assemble IKEA furniture. That's just disrespectful. Alright, so that's it. It's done. I mean, once it's all put together, it stabilizes it, it rigids it up a little bit. Rigids it up? Gets a little more rigid, and it's alright. I mean, I think it'll suffice. I don't think she's gonna beat the crap out of this stuff. And if not, then I think it should last just fine. It still ended up not being what I wanted it to be. Now, in terms of looks, it does, in fact, look better than what we would have otherwise done, which is just kind of like metal shelving. But if that nicer looking stuff can't stand the test of time and use, then that doesn't really matter. So we shall see. But regardless, I still feel a little shameful. Yeah, I think that's it. It just doesn't feel that good. But maybe by tomorrow I'll forget all about it and I'll move on and I'll be fine. But if this crap breaks in like a month or two, then I won't be fine. Believe me, I will let you know. But take this lesson from me and try not to make the same mistakes as I did. I was grateful that we were able to find something that would work for me after I messed up. The reason I got this one was because it was just held up by this rail at the top. It's not being, the weight isn't all being, pulled down on that rail. It has legs in the front end here, so that's why we gravitated toward this. It just ended up being a lower quality than we were expecting it to be. Lord willing, this lasts and we don't have to worry about it anymore. But thank you guys for watching and walking with me through my foolishness. If you like this, please like and subscribe. Subscribing will really help my channel and my ability to continue doing this. So thank you to everyone who comments, who has subscribed. I appreciate it, you guys, so much. But at that, this is done, well, for all intents and purposes. We might be adding a rod from this double unit to the wall there. We're not 100% sure. We might still add that in there to give a little more hanging space. We don't know. But for all intents and purposes, it's done. She can start moving her crap in. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. Then the best thing for you to do would to be an actual... Jeez. Then the best thing for you to do would to be... Why would I keep saying to be? Then the best thing for you to do would to be... Oh my gosh, I keep doing it. Jeez, oh, peach.